Thank you, sir, and good afternoon. Now, there are a few observations that I'll make, which are general, pretty general by nature, but ones that are defining the way e-governance applications or e-governance standards are evolving over a period of time. Hitherto, what has happened in the e-governance application is that we build systems of record, systems which capture transactions and are inward-looking, meaning that they are mostly oriented towards automation of the department, automation of the processes which were there. What is the next level? The next level typically lies with participative decision making, wherein you are essentially communicating with the constituents that you serve, which is the citizens. And a whole new design thinking philosophy is emerging out of the practice because of certain other technologies which are also coming up, like cloud, big data, mobility, which are now affecting the way we are infusing information and communication technology into e-governance applications. So typically, if you see, these are the three large areas where the government will have to reorient their applications to ensure that they ride the bandwagon or the reach or the advantages or leverages the technology that mobility, cloud, and big data, provides them. But I'm not going to leave it there. Let us also understand what these are. If you look at the teledensity of India, we are looking at almost 80-85% of the population being covered by mobile devices. Okay, a piece of statistic doesn't mean that 85% out of the Indian population have mobile phones, but those are the amount of SIM cards that has been sold. Now it presents a huge potential for e-governance applications to ride on this wave. One, because one of the issues of accessibility in rural villages is addressed by that, which is about driving the applications across to citizens who would interact with them, driving citizen services on mobile, which is one. But also from the government's operations perspective, mobility is being used and will be used more frequently going forward. Say, for example, in the area of, let's say, irrigation. Now, typically what would happen, there would be irrigation officers who would go to different rivers, tributaries, distributaries, measure their, water levels, and then report back to the district headquarters or the state headquarters. Now, this is a process which still happens today and takes time. If this can be on mobile devices where they can take the readings and send it up on real time across to, the state headquarters, then people who are manning the operations at the state irrigation departments can get this information and can take preventive action if there needs to be one. One innovative example, and again I have to come back to Maharashtra, of what we've done with respect to mobility is use it in a very innovative manner in the area of tree census. Now the Department of Environment and Forest has put a diktat on the urban local bodies to keep account of the green cover in that particular urban geographical area. So what people traditionally used to do is that they used to typically go out, photograph the trees, note down its species, note down its height, so on and so forth. Nobody actually mapped the tree throughout its life cycle. Nobody knew where the tree exactly was because there was no geotagging or geolocation possibilities which emerged. And most of them wouldn't even go to find out what is the status of the tree. So the first step was, nowadays we have these smartphones which have cameras. We will go take those mobile phones, we'll capture the pictures of the trees, and we will also capture the details with regards to species, with regards to growth, with regards to any plant pathology symptoms that may be there. We did that, but we still saw that there was ways and means of circumventing this innovative piece. what was happening is that once the picture was there, it was downloaded onto the hard disk, and every time a surveyor had to send his data, he would upload it from his hard disk and send it back. So what we did was, we started geotagging this particular application, meaning that the application will only spawn on his mobile device when he is near the geolocation of the tree. That means per force, he will have to go near the tree, take the fresh photograph and upload it. So this was one of the innovations that we did for Pune Municipal Corporation. Again, on to some of the other areas, like say for example, social engineering. Everybody seems to be on Facebook, Twitter. And then I also talked about participative decision making. Some people may call it demand side governance, where you involve the populace in general to understand their feedback, understand the sentiment, and tune and slice and dice your policies to look at the public sentiment and act likewise. So a whole discipline of social engineering and and social media is evolving around this particular area. And we have something called social media analytics on the cloud, which is being used very beautifully in this kind of time and date where elections are around the corner, and we want to know which part of the population is going which side. And but we see a huge amount of potential, because we see the police department, we see the municipal corporations having social media presence, and there are a lot of posts which are happening, lot of interactions which are happening on those social media, which need to be captured. They need to be understood for what they are, and then also do or take certain decisions to ensure that if things are not going the way it should, they're set right. I take the example of, I can't take the examples of Indian names because we are on a non-disclosure agreement with them, but take the example of the city of Boston. The city of Boston's mayor, so typically the mayoral candidates also go to the Senate and also onto the presidential office. They have a set of key performance indicators to go by. And these key performance indicators have to be stated to the citizens on a real-time basis. And the citizens comment. And then he has to understand where the bottlenecks are and take preventive action. So there also social media analytics as well as KPI-based performance dashboards, which is on the analytics side, is coming of great use. And this can be driven on mobile devices as well, and they are being driven on mobile devices. The last area which I left, in India, of course, in terms of cloud, let me also take the example of two projects that we have done, very innovative projects. We went down to the Sarpanch's office in Soda village in Rajasthan, and we automated the entire application. So it was a CSR job. So we went and built the application for the Sarpanch's office, which is the easier part of the story. Now you do realize that a software grant would also mean that it needs a matching grant in terms of, let's say, annual maintenance contract. The Sarpanch's office, this was a lady who had a corporate background but came back to serve the village. They needed, servers, they needed manpower. So now how do you provide that? We thought about it quite a lot, and then we said that, okay, we will drive it on the cloud for them. So what is happening is that we are driving it on the cloud. The Sarpanch's office just has to log in using a 2G dongle, and they can do their transactions on the applications, and in the end they can close their notebook or PC and then go back. This we have also replicated in Maulai village in Meghalaya, in the Sarpanch simile in their district. And this is actually quite a good example of how the cloud as a medium of consumption as well as delivery is going to affect the way e-governance applications are going to get delivered. And we know that the government of India has something known as the Meghraj, which is the cloud policy. And a lot of states are also going in for a state data center, which is based on clouds. They're building applications which can be driven on the cloud. They are re-architecting their existing solutions so that they can be on the cloud. What it does, it frees up a lot of resources, monetary or otherwise, and lets the department concentrate on their core competences, which is in the area of governance. Last but not the least, let me get into the area of big data. Now, big data is another jargon by the IT community, or is it? I mean, over the last, I've been in this particular industry since, 1992, and I've seen the e-governance grow in this country. And right from 2002 to 2003, and some of the departments much before that, like Central Board of Direct Taxes, Excise and Customs, so on and so forth. But most of the applications at the state level actually took off around 2001, 2002 and beyond. They have generated a huge amount of data. And within that data lies actionable information. And bureaucrats like the ones here would want that actionable piece of information. The problem is you just can't put an analytics layer on top, make a normal SQL query and get that. Because the data is in exabytes and petabytes. And if you fire a query, it will take you 3-4 days for the results to come. So huge amount of development work, huge amount of research is going into in-memory. And there we have a product which is called HANA, which is again getting used to churn this data almost 1,000 times faster than what traditional systems can. What are the use cases in government? I can understand from a telecom segment, somebody wants to understand customer churn, or from the retail segment, somebody wants to know why diapers and beer bottles are selling more on Fridays. But this is government, this is to do with citizens. Emergency and disaster is emerging as a huge discipline within the governance process. And we have seen the Uttarakhand disaster, we've seen other man-made disasters in the past. And the response of the government machinery, for whatever it's worth, has been a little slow. The government has taken steps, it has set up a National Disaster Management Agency. Each one of the states is setting up a State Disaster Management Agency as well as a State Disaster Relief Force. What it needs is an incident management system. And this incident management system unfortunately has to handle big data. Because you've got data coming in streams in exabytes and petabytes from Med Department, from Intel reports, from transactional systems. They have to be interpreted. The net threat perception has to be shown on real time then and there. And it has to be broadcast to the people right up to the village taluk level for people to take necessary action. So emergency and disaster management, real-time situational awareness, these are some of the areas where big data can get used, apart from actionable information. So I think I've covered most of the biggest of the three technologies which are taking the IT industry by storm, as well as what is going to be the future of e-governance applications. Again, just before I leave the mic to my other colleagues on this panel, just wanted to mention that today, while we have thought about e-governance applications, and we've thought about citizen-centric applications, I quite like the point made by my previous speaker on actually making digital inclusion happen, extending digital inclusion into social sector, making citizen-centric applications for people with different abilities. There also SAP, has been very active. In fact, it has collaborated with, again, Xavier's Institute in Mumbai in building applications for people with visual difficulties so that they can navigate around the city. So I think there's going to be a time and place where we need to make the citizen-centric applications available to people with different abilities. So thank you once again for the chance given to me.